Welcome to the next lecture of our BDD with ReqnRoll video series. And in this lecture, we are going to talk about how we can write an effective BDD scenario in the Gherkin format within ReqnRoll tool in our Visual Studio. So if you remember, in our last lecture, we created this project from the complete ground up. We installed ReqnRoll in as a tool in Visual Studio 2022, and also we created a ReqnRoll project from the template. And now we're going to start writing the scenario over here, which is the feature file. So this is the feature file that you need to worry about, the dot feature file, which is responsible for holding all the different types of features that you write, like a manual testing. So for instance, I'm going to write a new feature. My testing right now is I wanted to automate this particular application, which is the EA app application, where my scenario, my feature itself is to test the login feature. Right? So how do I write this? Well, I go Visual Studio over here under the features folder. So if you don't create the project, the ReqnRoll project from the project template, but if you're creating everything from the scratch, then you need to have this folder structure, which is like a just like an actual Cucumber's specification or Gherkin specification. You need to have a features folder and a steps or step definitions folder, and then you need to have like a hooks folder or something like that. So there we go. So we have got these two folders, which is the features folder and step definitions folder. But you can have the hooks folder, which can also have some reusable libraries and stuff. So at the moment on the features folder, I can just go and create a new item. And I can choose show this template, and then I can choose a feature file from here. As you can see, the feature files for ReqnRoll, you can choose that, or you can also create probably like a new file and then put dot feature, just work the same way as well. So if I choose this feature file for ReqnRoll over here, and then I'm gonna say login.feature, which means it's gonna create a new like a template over here for you. Like, see the feature login, write a short summary of the feature, and this is the tag, and this is the scenario. So you can see that there is a scaffolding of the feature comes in over here for you. And look at that, we have got a Cucumber logo there, and there is no like a code behind for this particular feature file. The reason why there is nothing is because we don't have any of the steps, and we have not really compiled this particular project yet. So once I compile the project, you will see there is going to be a like a code behind file, which is auto-generated by ReqnRoll. And I'll show you how that looks like. But let's get to this particular feature over here. And I'm going to say testing the login feature of application. So that's my feature description. And I'm going to say this is going to be doing probably a login test. I mean, you don't really have to give a tag like login, but for instance, you're going to be doing that. You can do it, and you can write a scenario here. So the scenario name is going to be test login with valid credential. Yeah, looks good. And I'm going to say given I click the login link when I enter the username and password, then I click login, then I should be logged in. So let's say this is the scenario that I'm writing over here. Or maybe if you want to go even more detail in this particular scenario, I'm going to say given I click the login link and I enter the username and password, and I click the login button. So if you see there, there is going to be maybe a sign in button or login button. I don't know what is that. Oh yeah, there is a login button. So, and I see this is a login link and this is a login button. So these are two different things that we have. And I'm going to say when I enter the username and password, but I did not tell you what username and passwords are. So I'm going to say, and I enter the username as, and there is a double quotes I'm going to put there as admin, and password as password, something like that. Then, and I click the login button, then I should see, I should be logged in. So this is my scenario that I'm writing over here. See, This scenario is now more detailed than compared to just writing 3 lines of code. So you can just write as much as possible, and you can also include the test data that you're trying to enter in here so that it could be more readable as well. But you may think, Karthik, why we are putting the password here? What if my password is encrypted? I don't want to enter the password in here. Then probably you can bring those information from your configuration file or step definition file, or probably even from the environment variable for that matter. So you can do that as well. But at least for now, for this basic scenario, you are just entering the password here because it's so open and wide. So now this is the scenario that you have written. Now I wanted to run this particular scenario. So how do I run that scenario using the ReqnRoll? Well, the way while I say running the scenario, what I really mean is I'm going to make this scenario as an actionable test. When I say actionable test, what I really mean is that I wanted to execute this test like an automated test as well. Like, for instance, I can fuse this scenario with an UI testing library like Selenium or Playwright for that matter. So how can I do that? I mean, don't worry about fusing it with Selenium or Playwright in this particular lecture. Just see how you can make use of that happen. I mean, make that happen. So if you want to make that happen, really, as I told you in our last lecture, you can just right click the steps over here, and you see that we have got a go to definition link, which I clicked last time and it went to the new steps definition files over here. But now, because there is no steps definitions over here for the login, if I try to go to the definition, you see that ReqnRoll is going to give me a suggestion that the steps is undefined. Do you want to copy a step definition skeleton snippet to the clipboard? So what it's really telling me that, do you want to copy this code snippet? See that it has just created, like, given I click login link, like this text over there, it is essentially telling me that this is the actual step that you can implement for this step definition. So I can do that. I'm going to say yes, which means now that code, the C# code, is now copied in a clipboard, and I can now use that to create in a separate class file, and then I can do that from there. Or you can also define steps. See that there is an option called as define steps. So if you just do define steps, there is going to be another window opened where it is going to define all the steps. Look at that, all the steps whichever is not implemented into a class name login step definitions, like this one, like calculator step definitions, is going to telling me I can now create everything for you in a class file called as login step definitions, which is quite good, right? We can do that. So I can say create, and then it is going to create a login step definitions.cs file for me under the step definitions folder automatically. Look at that. See, it has got all the skeleton for us. There's a class file like login step definition. It also decorated that class using the binding attribute, because if you don't have a binding attribute, then the step definition won't map with the login.feature over here. I'll tell you what I really mean about that. Look at that. Like, all the steps are now mapped over here with given, when, and then. There is no and keyword, so just given, when, then, right? So this is cool. It's already done, and we have got the feature over here. Look at that. There is one thing which is missing. It says when I enter username as admin and password as password. So for some reason it looks like it has not really mapped. When I enter the username as string and password as string, it looks like it is not mapping it, but it is correct. It is not something wrong or whatever. So it looks like correct to me. So let it be there. Now, as I told you, this login feature has got no code behind file. Let's see if I try to build this solution, I get a code behind, and look at that. We have got a code behind there, the login.feature.cs file, which was not there before, and now we're getting it there. So this is pretty cool. So now it is already there. And also look at that. When I enter the username as admin and password as password, is now mapped. So it was earlier a bit of a gray color, and now it's just turned out to be black because it could able to map based on the code generation. It could map to the login step definition. And now if you try to do a right click and go to the definition, it will take you to that particular steps on the step definition file. just appropriate steps on the step definition file, which is pretty cool. So this was something not happening before, but now we could able to do that. So this is how you can see that we can create a steps like a scenario feature using the ReqnRoll, and then you can also navigate to the step definition over here, and then you can perform the action. But now let's say, as I told you, right, this binding attribute is quite important for this particular step definition file. Let's say assume that I'm going to just comment this code using Control KC in Visual Studio. And now if I try to build the solution, see what happened now. If I go back to the login.feature, all the step definitions will now become grayed out. The reason why is because now it feels that there is no step definition for this particular steps. So if I go to the definition, it says that, oh, there we go, this step is undefined. Well, it was defined before, but now what happened? The reason why this is happening is because we have removed the binding attribute. So binding is very important. It's like a glue to gel the feature file, the text feature file, with the step definition file. In other language like Ruby, we call it as glue. Even in Java, we call it as glue to map a feature file steps with the step definition file, which is on Java. Similarly, in Ruby and Python, you do the same thing. The same idea is over here in the C#.NET. But now the moment I change it to like uncomment this binding, and if I compile the project, and if I go to the login feature, you look at it just becomes black color again, because now it has mapped, which is pretty cool. So this is about the features and steps and how everything works behind the scene in the ReqnRoll world. And now you can see how we can run this particular step definition. So if I'm going to go to the definition file, so if you have like a pending step definition, throw new pending definition, it is not going to work. So I'm going to say like a simple console.writeLine in here, right? I'm going to say console dot writeLine, and I'm going to say I click the login link. So these are going to be generated by the GitHub Copilot for me. So I'm going to take the advantage of that so that I can reduce number of keystrokes. And I'm going to say, and I enter the username and password. And console.writeLine, and I click the login button. Console.writeLine, I should be logged in, right? This is like a console that I'm trying to write over here. And now if I try to run this entire feature, it is gonna give me those verbose information that I just added over here on the console.writeLine. But how do I run this step definitions and the feature file? Well, in Visual Studio, you gotta go to Tools, which is a wrong one, sorry. You're going to go to Test and then go to the Test Explorer. Yeah, see, this Test Explorer window just opens up over here. You could just snap it on the left-hand side, something like how I'm doing over here. It just goes and sticks there, and it is ready for you to have it for the future purpose. So you can just minimize this output. We don't really care. And now let's try to open this whole thing. Look at that. We have got our login feature over here. And the reason why this login feature is coming, just like a bit more depth information that you can get it, is because this is an NUnit test behind the scene. When I say NUnit, you just go to this login feature. There is this login feature.cs file. The auto-generated code, you can see that it's using an NUnit framework behind the scene, right? And this NUnit is what really makes this ReqnRoll to appear on the Test Explorer. Not the plain text from the .feature file makes this happen, but the .feature.cs file, just this one, is what really bringing you these tests into those Test Explorer, right? That's the important thing that you need to understand, like how this is really working behind the scene. And now let's try to run this test. I mean, you've got enough information, like how everything works under hood. And now let's try to run this test. Let's see what's going to happen. See, nothing is going to happen on the UI. You don't even expect that to work because we have not did anything there. But look at that. The moment I run this particular test, I get a standard output saying, given I click the login link and I click the login link, when I enter the username and password, which is the admin and password, and I enter the, look at that. So all these informations are coming because I have printed them all out from the console.write line over here. So that's why it's all printing up, and we are seeing it's all done. And the test is also passing because we have not even did any assertions. That's why it's just passing. But yeah, look at that. That's how we could able to do all these operation from the complete ground up by creating a new scenario, new feature, and run the test using Visual Studio with ReqnRoll. And the same thing we can extend with multiple different scenarios. Now you may ask, like, Karthik, see, you have written a scenario, but what if I have another scenario in the same feature file with an invalid credentials? So how do I write that? So you just go copy paste this over here and see that there is a scroll line saying the feature file contains a name with the same kind of definition, which is pretty cool. So it knows that there is, even though it's a plain text, it now gives you an error message saying that the scenario already exists. So you can immediately say that, oh, there's a duplicate scenario in here. These are some of the advantages which ReqnRoll has got compared to the Excel sheet. You remember the one? You don't really go with that. You should probably use this one for that matter. So I'm going to say test login with an invalid credential. And now see that scenario is happy and it just works fine. I'm going to say when I enter username as admin and password as invalid password. See, the thing is, now I can just change the way the password needs to be entered over here, and the other steps remains exactly the same. So what does that really mean is that while I try to build this solution, you will see that we will be getting two tests over here with the valid and the invalid credentials. And now if I try to run these tests, they both will be using the same kind of step definitions, but actually they are running in two different tests right now. So you just try to reuse the same steps across two different scenarios over here, because that is the power of this entire ReqnRoll for reusability purpose. So while I say reusability, we can reuse the same steps elsewhere in the entire project. So let's assume I'm going to create another feature file. Probably I'm going to call this as some other login feature. I don't know. Maybe some other login is something else, right? So I'm going to say perform login with maybe forget password or whatever, right? And I'm gonna just write, like, I'm gonna keep things as simple as the same kind of operation. I'm not just copy that. I'm gonna paste it over here. And the thing is, this test with test login with forget password. So I'm gonna say, given I click the login link and I click the forget password link from the login page, and I enter, I'll say probably, and I enter the email for forget password, something like that, and then I click the sign in or maybe send button, whatever that you have got, right? So you can see here in this particular scenario that we have got, so let's say this is not login, this is like forget password. So in this particular scenario, as you can see, these three steps are new, as I agree that, but look at that, this particular step is not new, because this is something we have already implemented in the login feature. So what I'm essentially doing is, even though this feature itself is a new feature, we can now reuse the existing steps from elsewhere, which is available in other feature file, into this particular feature file. And that is the power of reusability. So now if I just go to the definition, it's going to take me to this particular login step definitions.cs file, which is pretty cool, right? Like, you don't really rewrite things from the scratch. And for these new step definitions, like new steps, you need to write a new step definitions in a different file, maybe file for that matter. So if I'm going to say define these steps, you see that it's going to say some other login step definitions. I'm going to do create. It's going to create that for me over here. So that's going to be a different file altogether. So you look at that. Now it's all mapped. But the thing is, over here, if you just go right click this particular step definition, the first one, the first step, go to the definition, it's going to take you to the login step definition. But if you're going to go right click on the enter the email for the forget password and go to the definition, it's going to take you to the some other login step definitions.cs file, because now it's all mapped. Even though the steps remain in different class files, they are still all work in one single action to perform what you're looking for. So this is the power of the step definitions, guys. This is how the mapping really happens behind the scene with the steps over here. So now that we have created scenarios, we also saw how we can reuse the steps with this particular scenarios. And this is the power of how you can work with scenarios in the ReqnRoll. In our next lecture, we talk about how we can work with different types of scenarios, rules, and also how we can work with multiple different data sets with scenarios, which will be making even more sense while we try to understand things from the complete ground up. Thank you.